Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Dirt Hippie channel. I'm Jenny, and we are gardening in Maryland, Zone 7. Today we're going to talk about raspberries. I've been getting a lot of questions about my raspberries and how to grow them, what to grow. So I thought I would give you my top 5 raspberry growing tips today. So let's get started. The first tip is to give them plenty of room to roam. Now, you just saw how big this patch is, and it's grown over the years. Full disclosure, I did not plant these black raspberries. They have been here for a number of years. They moved in because we weren't taking care of this little patch of earth, and they decided to call it home, and I've been cultivating them over the last few years. This is a native black raspberry that I have here, and I've selected for it out of I have blackberries, wineberries, and black raspberries, and I've selected in this patch for the black raspberries because they are my favorite. They grow canes that are anywhere from 5 to 6 feet tall, and they can get even longer than that if you allow them to. And they arch over, they can tip layer. You can keep them confined to a spot and continue to cultivate. It will take a little bit of management on your part. For black raspberries in particular, you're gonna need to give them probably about 3 to 4 feet of space all around them, each plant, because they will take up all of that space. And you want them to, because you'll get more berry production that way. The second tip is to allow sunlight to get through and through, meaning reduce and eliminate your competition. Don't have other plants growing in amongst your raspberries. And I know I'm the queen of sticking things together with each other, but in this case, reducing the competition for these guys means that you're going to end up with better berry production. So I leave plenty of space between my plants. I have culled out some of the weaker plants, so I'm left with some of these stronger ones, and I can get sunlight all the way down the stems. There are leaves all the way down to the ground in some cases, and you want that plant to be able to get all of its energy that it can from its leaves while it's still in its prime cane stage. The third tip is to take advantage of propagation. Now, there are a few ways that black raspberries in particular will propagate themselves, and most cane fruits for that matter. Some cane fruits do it differently. Blackberries, for instance, like to usually have root suckers. I don't usually see those tip layering, but then there are other cane fruits that will tip layer, so that's an additional way that they can propagate themselves. I usually propagate mine by tip layering in the fall to get an additional plants, so I'm not rooting around and digging them up. And this is what happens when you tip layer. And what happens with the plant is you take a cane that is bending downward, and it is actually looking for a place to set that tip, and it will root into the soil there. Once it touches the soil, it's actually going to develop roots in that spot to our advantage. So what I usually do is stick a pot underneath it, and then I weigh down the tip with a rock, and it will set roots in my pot. And then I can go back and clip the baby plant from the mother plant and move it to a different location so I can enlarge my patch that way. It's a great way to get more raspberries in this case and make your patch bigger, or move the patch back if you need to eliminate some canes in the front because it's kind of pushed a little farther than what you want. You can pull the whole patch back by clipping some and moving them back to where they were supposed to go. Now, the second way, and this is what you're seeing right now, is root shoots. So black raspberries will also shoot up from their roots. And all of these new canes that you see behind me, all these bluish green canes, are root shoots. So those are from the parent plant, and they just popped up because they got more sun, and it's another great way to enlarge your patch. But this is typically the way that raspberries propagate themselves and stay in one place. The tip layering helps them move and advance and take over a new space. So my fourth tip is to prune back old canes. And what I mean by that is, in cases like this black raspberry here, it has a 2-year life cycle. So right here we've got a new cane. This is called a primacane, and you can see it's sort of that bluish green color all the way up. And that the bluish green color comes from just it's called glaucous bloom, and you can see I can wipe it off. It's just sort of a film on it that it's a whitish film, and it gives it a sort of bluish hue. And then this is a floor cane, or a secondary cane. This cane is 2 years old, okay? So what we want to do is encourage these primacanes to grow, and then once the secondary cane has finished flowering, because that's what happens. These primacanes on the black raspberries in particular are not going to have any fruit on them. It's that when they turn into the secondary cane that they will bear fruit. And once they're done, you can clip them back. Now, I don't tend to clip back my canes until the end of the season, because you can see that they have leaves all along their stems. Here's another example. They have leaves all along their stems, and they will continue to photosynthesize and bring energy to the roots while they are still growing. Even though they've flowered, I still leave them intact until end of season when all the leaves have dropped off. And that's so that my root zones can get more energy. So we have an abundant number of primacanes the next year, and it pushes energy into this year's primacanes so they can become really great producers for next year. Clearing out the old canes also is a process to help reduce the number of diseases you might get. If, for instance, a cane had cane blight or something like that, and you clear it out, there's less chance that you're going to spread that through your raspberry colony. So just keep that in mind. It's really a good housekeeping measure, and you're going to be able to see your canes a lot easier if the old ones are cleared out. That cane will never produce fruit again, so it really isn't going to be beneficial to keep that cane around. It also is not likely to have leaves on it either. Unfortunately, they tend to just sort of not put energy back into that cane once it's done for the season. Tip number 5 is to prune or not to prune. This is really your choice. Everyone does it differently, and it also depends on what kind of cane fruit you are growing. Because I have black raspberries, I'll start with that. My black raspberries are summer bearing. This is a native black raspberry that occurs here, and most of the ones that grow native in my area are going to be summer bearing cane fruits. That's just their natural habit. And in order to get more fruits, sometimes what folks do is they clip back the primacane. They'll clip off the top of the primacane about 3 or 4 inches, maybe up to 6, whatever it is, to get to a good leaf node. And that will encourage lateral branching. And this is true for a lot of different plants. Don't do this to trees though. Please don't top a tree. But with these plants, they will produce lateral branches, which gets you more fruit. That can, in some instances, stress the plant, so you'll need to watch to see if it's deficient in anything. And it goes back to my competition talk. We want to reduce the competition because these plants need a lot of energy to produce fruit. And then when you make them produce even more fruit, they're going to need even more energy. So that comes in, that brings in the question of whether or not you should fertilize. And if you are going to prune to make laterals, I would suggest fertilizing maybe once during the season before they start to fruit with something like a berry tone that has more P, so NPK. I'll do another video on fertilizers, but what you want is the phosphorus that does encourage fruiting and flowering. So I wouldn't put too much on it, but one dose of barytone might not hurt, especially if you're clipping back to make laterals. That's true for summer bearing varieties. Now, if you're gonna have a fall bearing variety, you don't necessarily want to do that, because your fall bearing is going to produce fruit on the primocanes, which I said mine doesn't do. It's because I have a summer bearing variety. So you don't want to clip those primocanes back if you have a fall or ever bearing variety, because what you're doing is taking off the fruit production, unless that's what you want to do, and treat it as a summer bearing variety, which that's totally fine too. If you have a fall or ever bearing variety and you want to get one big harvest, I would suggest pruning those back and then pushing it to produce its summer fruit lower down on the stems. What happens with those fall or ever bearing varieties is they tend to produce their fall crop, their fall berry crop on the tops, and then their the next summer, they'll produce their berry crop lower down on the stem. And so if you prune it, you prune off the top before it has a chance to fruit, you've just taken off your fall berry crop, but you will have a bigger summer crop the next year. So it's a trade-off. It's up to you how you want to do it. And for me, I like to be able to harvest all my berries at once, and I put them in the freezer and then I process them as I have an opportunity to do so. If you don't have that kind of space to store, maybe you do want a fall or ever bearing one that you can get some berries in the summer and then some in the fall, and make pies with some of them and make jams with others. That's totally up to you. And there's so many different varieties of berries out there, and each one has its own production time, and you're going to have to learn sort of how to treat it. I've learned over the years that my berries are pretty happy-go-lucky, and I really don't do a whole lot to them. I am going to try to prune some of these primocanes this year, and we'll see how much more production I get out of those versus out of the ones I just leave and sort of let become those 8-foot arching canes. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope this encouraged you to find a little bit of space in your yard for some cane fruits, in particular some black raspberries. Those are my personal favorites, if you can't tell from my patch here. And I'm always available for questions and comments. Feel free to send me a message down below or pick me up on Instagram or Facebook. It's Dirt Hippie everywhere. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great day, and I'll catch you outside.